Lost your video, Mark.
I know. I just turned it on. Okay.
All right, hit it, man.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Explorers Club World Wildlife Day event. We are honored to have you here. I am very excited to be welcoming Roie Galitz. Roie is an incredible adventurer, explorer, and wildlife photographer who has his greatest passion takes him out into nature for photography. It takes him into the wild. And as a wildlife and adventure photographer, he travels to extreme conditions to the most remote places on Earth, capturing the rarely viewed animals and their natural habitats. His life's mission is to bring awareness to preserving environmental issues and to pressing environmental issues and to taking pictures where they have not been taken before. Roie is a award-winning wildlife photographer. He's also a Greenpeace ambassador. And tonight's going to be unique because Roie will be presenting his groundbreaking work, his groundbreaking nature photography. It blew my mind when I saw it, so we're in for a treat. And Roie is an incredible Israeli ambassador for the natural world. He's in Tel Aviv tonight, so it's about 1 a.m. in the morning. So thank you, Roie, for staying up with us. And we are very excited to see your work, to talk about biodiversity. For those of you who don't know what biodiversity is, it's the biological diversity of life that is either on our planet, in an ecosystem, or even in our own backyards. But Roie has been going to the most remote places on the planet to capture that biodiversity and to share it with the public. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Roie Galitz on World Wildlife Day. And Roie, take it from here. And as questions come in, we will, I know you will answer some of them, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. So Roie, take it from here.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. Hi, everyone at the Explorers Club. So as Mark mentioned, I'm Roie Galitz. I'm a wildlife photographer. I'm going to share my screen just a sec. I hope it works well. Okay. So I'm a wildlife photographer and I'm a member of the Explorers Club. So right now I'm in Tel Aviv. It's 1 a.m. here, and it's exciting to be here at World Wildlife Day. So World Wildlife Day is a day that was announced by the United Nations General Assembly as a day to raise awareness to the biodiversity and the threats it encounters. So it's part of the United Nations SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm honored to be here today and to talk to you about it. And last year I spoke about World Wildlife Day at the United Nations HQ in New York City. So now with the pandemic, we're doing it live on the internet, which has a plus side and a downside. But the plus side is that we get to talk to so many people all over the world about this pressing issue. So first of all, during this talk, as Mark mentioned, feel free to ask questions. It's an interactive talk. It's live. It's not pre-recorded, and so feel free to ask questions. I'm going to answer the most relevant ones during the talk, and later on, after the talk is over, we're going to do a little bit more Q&A in case you have further questions. So I'm traveling all over the world photographing endangered animals, and I've been doing that for the last 15 years. And during that time, I found out that the world is changing way faster than I ever imagined. I mean, I knew global warming, I knew climate change, but for me it was like a buzzword you read in a newspaper or something. But when I saw it firsthand, when I saw the environment changing from one year to the next in such an alarming pace, I had to do something about it. So I started doing environmental work, and I found that my voice wasn't heard. So that's why I joined Greenpeace. And as Mark mentioned, I was honored to become a global ambassador for the North and South Pole. And there is so much work to do. And I feel fortunate to be around so many awesome people, also members of the Explorers Club, who are doing tremendous work raising awareness and preserving our fragile environment. Today I'm going to talk to you about 4 of my favorite locations around the world. and I have many, but we have to focus on something, and we're going to talk about endangered species. The first place I'm going to take you to is one of my favorite places on Earth, and that is Svalbard. Svalbard is a Norwegian archipelago in the high Arctic, about 600 miles away from the North Pole itself. So we're talking about 80 degrees latitude. So conditions in Svalbard is, it's quite cold. It's pretty up north, pretty up there. And that's the way I look like when I'm working. So this is my work outfit, not what I'm wearing right now. And I'm using my cameras in a way to create photos and also videos. So I was cold at the beginning, but then I found out as I went there more and more that there is no such thing as cold. There is not properly dressed. So I also found that clothing has tremendous impact, not only on my comfort and survival, but also on my photography. Because when you're cold, your muse freezes. So I don't know if you can see in this photo, but I'm actually smiling because it's a selfie, but also because I'm not really cold. Even in this photo, while I was in a whiteout from hell, I'm still smiling and I'm enjoying myself, since it's so amazing to be out there in this amazing location, but also because I'm convenient and nice and warm, although it's freezing outside. So I'm traveling on snowmobiles, and I'm also leading expeditions to that remote region. We're going through ice caves, and nature is like a museum, like a piece of art, and everywhere you look, it looks amazing. And we're sleeping in an abandoned Russian Soviet town called Pyramiden. So Pyramiden was built in the time of Stalin, but after the collapse of the Soviet Union, it's been abandoned, and there are only 10 people living there, where there were 2,000 people living there before the collapse. So I was there and I met Sasha, this awesome guy. He's totally Soviet communist Russian guy, and he tried to convince me that communism will last forever and capitalism will never survive. And of course, we're in the middle of nowhere, so we agreed. We were there even on May 1st, May Day. So May 1st is a Workers' Day. So we did a parade and singing songs in Russian about Soviet Union and Stalin and Marxism. But we're not there for communism. We're there for polar bears. And polar bears are very hard to find in the white background, because polar bears are white and the background is white. So we're scanning and going from one fjord to the next until we finally found our first polar bear, and this is in 2015. So I'm there and I'm photographing this mother and her two adorable little cubs, and you can see the interaction between the mother and her cubs and how much she loves her cubs, and they're really sweet and nice and cuddly. Of course, we can't touch them, but all along I wanted to hug them because they're so adorable. And suddenly, Mama Bear, that chest. I didn't understand what's going on at first, but then these two little cubs started running towards her, climbed on top of her, and started breastfeeding. So Mother Bear is breastfeeding her young cubs with super fat rich milk. So this is 30-35% fat milk, because the cubs needs to grow as soon as possible to survive the high Arctic winters. So, and then something magical happened. While taking photos of wildlife, the biggest compliment I can get is when an animal falls asleep in front of me. So Mama Bear and the two cubs, after they were breastfeeding, were exhausted and just fell asleep in front of me. So this is the biggest compliment, because it means that this animal trusts me with her eyes wide shut. You don't go to sleep if you're stressed. So I knew that she trusts me, and trust is one of the most crucial aspects of wildlife photography, because you want to take photos of relaxed animals and not stressed animals. And then they woke up I've had this amazing family portrait. And like my own cubs, like my own kids, they start running around. So they run around back and forth. And then Mother Bear and her 2 cubs start walking towards me. And they're getting closer and closer and closer. At some point, they're so close that they don't fit in the frame. So I did the only logical thing and started shooting vertically. At that moment, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Okay, don't worry, it wasn't the polar bear, but I turned around and I saw Tom. Tom is my local polar bear specialist. And he looks at me with an alarmed look and tells me, Roy, we need to leave now. I take my eyes off the camera's viewfinder and I see that Mother Bear and her 2 cubs were just 20-30 meters away from me. So we quickly hopped on our snowmobiles and drove away, leaving our precious gear behind. Mother Bear and her 2 cubs continued walking, and she breastfed them again, but she's really hungry because she went for 5 months without eating anything. They were born in December in a maternity den, and all along she doesn't move, she doesn't exit the den, she only breastfeeds them, and she loses around 100 kilograms during that period. And now she has to eat. And this is her food. She eats the ringed seal. This is one of her primal food sources. So the ringed seals are really abundant in that area, in Svalbard. And you can see here the ringed seal is just sunbathing, enjoying the nice, warm, -20 Svalbard day. And the polar bear, our mother, is walking behind him. And she's trying to hunt, and her cubs are making too much noise. They continue moving around, and she tries to hunt again, and they continue to make too much noise. And the seals hear that noise, and they run away. They go to the next breathing hole, hoping not to become dinner, and she fails in hunting again and again and again. And she's furious with her little cubs. Of course, just to be honest, she's not furious with them. She's just yawning in this photo. But as a photographer, we decide which story we're going to tell. So it looks like she's yelling at the cubs, but she's actually yawning, to be honest. But you can't be mad, with such adorable little cubs. So, and look at that thing. Okay, he's just adorable. We are having some questions, I see. We have some comments about the camera gear, how good it looks, what is it. So I'm using Nikon cameras. I'm supported by Nikon, to be honest. I'm also supported by Jitso and Lowepro and G Technology and DJI. So I'm carrying around 800mm and 600mm lenses, but I prefer the wider lenses, okay, to get closer. So Mother Bear is trying to hunt endlessly, and she fails and fails and fails until one of the times we were out there, we saw that Mother Bear has caught something, and she drags it out of the ice, and we see that after many hours of waiting, we see that she caught a ringed seal. So this photo of a polar bear catching a ringed seal is the first photo of its kind ever in history, first photo taken. So what I like about this photo is that, first of all, it's on the one hand, it's really motherly in a sense. I mean, the way she's hugging the seal, it's a bear hug. And on the other hand, it's really brutal because this seal is about to become dinner. And also it's a lesson because her cub, her female cub on the left, is learning from her how to hunt. So when she grows up, she will be a good hunter on her own. So this is a really interesting photo in that sense. Someone's asking what signs of climate change do you see while up there? So I'm going to show you a little bit ahead. I have some examples of that. So after the mother caught the seal, which was really exciting to watch, I hope that the screen share is working properly. Mark, let me know if, because I was worried about the video. Just let me know that it's working
great.
properly. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, it looks great.
Good. Because we've had some technical issues, so that's why I'm asking. So after the mother polar bear got the seal out of the ice, dinner, or breakfast in that case, is served. They had seal takeaway, and the little female cub is bragging, sticking her tongue out, just showing off her mother, and then she comes to say thanks to her mother. After that, they've had a little bit of dessert, and the cubs went to play in their playground, which was nearby, a piece of ice that they go up and they slide down. So every year looks different. In 2018, when I was there, I saw this big male walking around, and he was sniffing the air, tasting the air. So polar bears, like all mammals, have a little organ at the top of their palate called Jacobson's organ. And with that organ, they can sense pheromones of females in heat. So this guy was tasting the air, looking for pheromones. It's like polar bear Tinder, so to speak. And then he found this amazing female. This marks the beginning of a courtship process. This is like the honeymoon. But the female is kind of spoiled. She doesn't play along. And this male is like sitting next to her, whining that she doesn't take care of him or pay attention to him. And she is sleeping with her eyes like that. And he is like over there like a sad puppy, waiting for her to wake up. And once she woke up, finally, they mated. So this is, again, truly exciting to see polar bears mating because it's so rare. They mate only once every 3 years because it takes 2.5 years for the cubs to grow up and go on their own. So that's why it's super rare to see a polar bears mate. And also, usually, they mate in the mountains and not on the sea ice. So it's really difficult for us to take photos of that. So I was really fortunate to see that mating. And after the mating, the male needs to cool things down. So he does this nice yoga tricks, cooling everything down. And males are males. Sometimes males are being kind of goofy in that sense. All over the animal kingdom. And then the male and female went their separate ways and will never see each other again. Okay? So the female on that instance gets into a state called sustained pregnancy. So the fertilized egg waits for 2 months before it transplants in the uterus and embryos start to develop. And that only happens if the female has enough body fat to survive the pregnancy. So that's also pretty cool. We have some members from Norway checking out in the chat and saying hi. So hi people from Norway. I hope to be there in April if your country will accept us. I'm planning to be there in April in Svalbard again, but Norway right now is closed. So in 2019, I'm there every year for several times, 3, 4, 5 times a year. In 2019, when I was there, I saw this male. And if you look carefully, you'll see that this male is injured. Okay, he has a little bit of bleeding behind his ear, and he was fighting with another male for the right to mate with a female in heat. So they sent those pheromones, and they were fighting, and this guy is the winner. And we followed him until he found the female, and this again marks the beginning of a courtship, of the honeymoon. And this male has chased away her 2 cubs. So she had 2 cubs. They were grown up. It was time for them to leave mom anyway. So he chased them away, and the cubs were just circling around trying to get back to mommy, but mommy was busy, so to speak. So this marks the beginning of a courtship. This male is a lot more aggressive than the male I showed you before. So this is really hardcore courtship. And this is the whiteout that you saw me covered in snow before. So these are images in the whiteout, and this looks so surreal and minimalistic that I really enjoy taking those photos. Also, it won several awards. This one specifically, the black and white. And again, we've had mating. Okay, so this mating again happened in 2019. And these guys were mating non-stop around the clock. And I have a friend, I'm helping him out. He's doing a PhD in about polar bears. And he said that I'm so lucky because every time I go to Svalbard, I see polar bears mate. And we should send me to Svalbard more often because we need more polar bears around. So polar bears see me and they start mating, so to speak. We have another question. Mark, a fellow photographer, wants to know how long were you tracking polar bears for to get these amazing pics? So I'm going to Svalbard 4 or 5 times every year. This project with the snowmobiles, I'm going there for a week at a time, and I'm staying there for usually 2 weeks. So I'm guiding expeditions of people who want to go there. And so it's about a week, and then I'm going back to Longyearbyen, which is the capital of Svalbard, get reorganized, made a new group, and I go there again. And during these expeditions, I'm also filming for the BBC. So I've done 3 projects for the BBC in Svalbard, and also for other channels as well and magazines. But you know, when you know where the polar bears are, and we know because we just left them, it's pretty easy. And we are using a really professional scout to find them, and we have our own polar bear specialist that takes care of guidance and in security and safety and everything in that sense. And we also go with production permits. So with the production permits, we can go into the restricted zones, which are no humans are allowed, and we have better chances of seeing polar bears. So we know what we're doing, so to speak. Okay. Besides the polar bears, I'm also photographing the Arctic foxes around, and you know these are also really amazing creatures. They don't have the mass and the body fat that polar bears have, but because they're small, they can only rely on their fur, and they have the most insulating fur in the animal kingdom. And they're really awesome mammals, the Arctic foxes. In the summertime, I go there again. But in the summertime, I can't go with a snowmobile because all the ice has melted. So I'm chartering a boat, a private boat, 12 people. And with that boat, I can get really close to polar bears. And then I got images like that. Remember what I told you, that the best compliment is when an animal falls asleep. So this polar bear fell asleep in front of us, and I've got this shot that I called it Dreaming of Sea Ice. And this emphasizes the relationship between polar bears and their sea ice. And they love their sea ice. They depend on their sea ice. And without sea ice, they cannot survive. And this is the threat that polar bears encounter, because sea ice is melting sooner and sooner and comes back later and later because ocean temperature is on the rise. And that's the biggest threat of all on polar bear survival. And this is why scientists think that polar bears won't survive the 21st century. Also, what I like about this photo is that this polar bear has 2 bodyguards. Okay, the 2 seagulls, one grounded and one airborne. So, and again, you see the amazing landscape of Svalbard in the background. Another amazing family that I encountered, that I met, is this family of polar bears, mother and 2 cubs. And these little guys were so curious. So we were there photographing the mother and 2 cubs, and they were pretty far away. And then the 2 little cubs started walking towards us, and they got closer and closer and closer, and they were just curious. And mother bear is just walking behind them. Yeah, sure, I come with you to check these humans out. And they reached the edge of the ice, and we were there. We didn't move. We had our engines off on the Zodiacs that we were using. The engines were off, and we used paddles just to stay put. So we didn't make a noise, we didn't make a sound, and they just came super close, and they felt super convenient, and we were completely still, and we didn't speak, and we got this amazing shot that also won awards, also in the Picture of the Year award, plus another 5 international awards for this one. So again, this is about respecting the animals. So when you respect the animals and respect their environment, and you're being patient and you don't disturb and you let them come to you, and you build that trust relationship with the wildlife, then you'll get the most amazing results. If you come in a condescending kind of way, I mean, nature would condescend on you. Okay, you won't get anything. And this is one of the most crucial parts of being a wildlife photographer. And this is also what I teach, to respect the animals and their environment. We are guests in their home and not the other way around. Jenny asks, the gloom and doom assessment that polar bears will become extinct in 2050, given the ice melt. Your take, please. Well, the recent assessment that I've heard is that 2/3 of polar bears would become extinct by 2050. But the answer is no one knows for sure. Okay, we don't have a crystal ball, but there are assessments relying on water temperature rising, ocean temperature rising. And we just need a couple of really bad years with no sea ice that polar bears numbers will plummet. I mean, it can be a really sudden shift. I mean, it can be not like a slowly declining graph, but it can be just, a cliff. We don't know when it's going to happen. We know that with the current trends, it's bound to happen. And this is the crucial issue. So the behind the scenes for this photo is this one. So you can see that we're completely still and the polar bears came to us and we didn't move an inch. We just kept our distance for safety reasons. Another polar bear, this guy is eating a walrus, sorry. And he was eating it until it sank, and we are like a fly on the wall. We don't intervene, we don't create any distractions, we don't harass the animals. Okay, so we let him be himself, and we were just there watching and photographing and documenting. As sea ice melts, polar bears are becoming more and more desperate for food. This guy was eating barnacle goose chicks, okay, barnacle goslings. And you can see that in his mouth there is one gosling, and he was just carrying it around, and the gosling was just looking around at the world for the last time before the polar bear just gulped it with one bite. And this is one of my favorite birds in the Arctic. So I called this photo Arctic Angel. And this is an ivory gull. So ivory gulls usually follow around polar bears. So this is a great sign if you see that when you're in Svalbard. So I really love these angels of the Arctic. Walruses are another amazing creature in the Arctic, and they have also been hunted to mere extinction in Svalbard by European sailors. After they finished off all the whales, they started hunting the walruses for blubber. So all of the population in Svalbard was extinct, except for a really small population in the northeast of Svalbard, and another population in Franz Josef Land, which is a Russian territory today. So now they're making a comeback in the recent years. And I really enjoy taking photos of them, and they're really intriguing animals with their amazingly unique biology. So they have the strongest suction force in the animal kingdom, in the mammals, and they just eat mollusks, seashells. They dive and they can gulp for 4,000 seashells in one dive. So they're pretty awesome in their ability. They see underwater with their whiskers, so that's how they feel where the food is, and it's really awesome to take photos of them as well. Arctic foxes, pups, so they play around and they play tag, and then they make up like brothers do. After they fight, they need to reconciliate. So regarding the climate change, I'm photographing glaciers, and glaciers are receding. So the glaciers I've been standing on in 2012 when I was there have receded by over 1 kilometer, almost 2 kilometers by now. So I'm flying drones and taking photos of those glaciers as they recede. I have a question. Have you seen any walrus eating seals? Oh, well, they do that. I did read several reports on that, and they do it in the most horrific way possible. They just catch the seal and they just suck the fat, the blubber off the seal while he's still alive. So it's pretty horrific. It sounds like something out of a horror movie. I did not see that in person, but it's been known to happen. So no, I did not see that. So without sea ice, polar bears are starving, and they can go for months without eating. They can go for 4, 5, even 6 months without eating anything. So they have one of the longest fasting periods of any mammal on Earth. And they do that. They survive because of reduced metabolism. So they just lay down on the ground, they rest, and they sleep, and they hardly move a muscle, and they conserve energy until the sea ice returns. So I'm doing a lot of projects also for Greenpeace International in the high Arctic, and also Greenpeace has sued the Norwegian government to stop oil and gas drilling near Svalbard, which violates the Svalbard Treaty from 1921. So I've been doing a lot of work on that issue as well, and I'm also encouraging people to swim when they're in Svalbard, again to raise awareness to the fact that there is almost no sea ice remained. So this footage, people ask me about video. So this footage has got into 3 projects of the BBC. One of them is a film called Snow Bears, narrated by Kate Winslet. We might do a screening at the club. I just talked about it with Anne, and so I can't show it here on the Zoom because Zoom doesn't like videos. So this is just a promo. So I'm one of 4 cinematographers who worked on that project, and I'm honored to be a part of that. And Kate Winslet, she's an amazing narrator, and she has really good experience with ice from the Titanic. So she knows how to deal with ice. And to finish off the Svalbard chapter, I'm going to finish with this photo of a polar bear trying to take photos. So this polar bear is the one that was mating in 2018. And he was walking around, he was checking us all along. So he was just looking at us like, what are you doing there? And he was curious. And curiosity is one of the main telltale signs of intelligence. So polar bears are really intelligent. Each polar bear has his or her own character. And they're really smart. And he knew what humans are, but he didn't know what cameras are. And he saw us, carrying our cameras like babies and taking care of them. And, he was just curious. So he just walked straight towards us, chased us away. We had to evacuate, and we couldn't take everything with us because we didn't have time. And he just walked up to the camera, had a look through the viewfinder, and I think he decided that photography is not for him. He prefers to be on the other side of the lens. And after he saw that, and he just continued on his path, and no cameras were harmed in the process. So this is Svalbard, and this is a story about polar bears. I'm going to take you to another place that I really like, near the South Pole in Antarctica. So Antarctica and South Georgia Islands are also a place of tremendous change in recent years. So all of these huge glaciers that you see in South Georgia has receded. This specific glacier that you see on top of the mountain has once reached all the way to the ocean. And this entire plain where you see all the king penguins, this was covered in glacier. And now it's in the last 100 years, it has receded so much that it's about to disappear. So the king penguin colonies in South Georgia are amazing to photograph. There is so much activity going on. It's really colorful and smelly and loud, but it's also a really good location to photograph. Not only penguins, but also the fur seals that raise their pups over there. And they're really cute and give the most amazing shows. I remember specifically one seal. This pup is a blonde pup, so they're really rare compared to the others. And she just put on such a cute little show for me until she got tired, took a big yawn. She did and then she went to sleep. And after that, I also had a commercial like for Benetton, United Colors of Benetton, like anti-racism thing, which also is pretty cool. Another animal, I think this is the funniest animal on Earth, is the elephant seal. So elephant seals look kind of human, but they make the funniest faces. So the next photo I'm going to show you, I called it the 3 tenors. So these are elephant seals singing opera with the top of their lungs. You decide which one is Pavarotti. Nancy asks, how does the recession of the glacier impact the penguins? So it doesn't impact directly in that sense. It impacts in the way that it clears more ground for them for the colonies. So now they have more ground for the colonies of the king penguins. But it impacts on the ecosystem in a way that it destabilizes the ecosystem, because a lot of the creatures that live in the ocean rely on the ice, and without the ice everything is changing and shifting. So they might be, now it's easier because they have more ground, but later it will be tougher because there will be less food. So everything is connected. Adelie penguins are one of the most resilient penguins in the world. The Adelies and the Emperors are the only ones that winter in Antarctica. So these are really badass penguins. Is it me, or I think that the video just froze? I think that the video just froze.
The video froze, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna try to restart the camera. Just so that.
And your photographs are incredible, Roie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I've reset the camera, but I think that the video is kind of dead at the moment. But I will try to fix it as we go along.
Go ahead and work on that. And are you able to switch the slides? If not, I have a question for you.
Yeah, no, I can switch the slides. That's not a problem.
Great.
I just want you to see me properly. And I'm just connecting and disconnecting the dongle. So, another penguin, Krill penguin, is the Gentoo penguin. So the Gentoo penguin is also, it's a really cool penguin. It's a brush-tailed penguin. And here you can see a mother. Yeah, I'm back. A mother with her offspring, with her chick, and she's feeding him in this blizzard from hell in Antarctica. So it's a good thing it was summer, because in the winter it can be really cold. So this photo actually was presented in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. These are chinstrap penguins. So there are 7 species of penguins living in Antarctica, and every one of them has unique behaviors. This is a leopard seal, and also, of course, a lot of whales, humpback whales in these photos. And the next photo I'm going to show you is one of my favorite sunsets I've ever seen in the world. And it was 11:30 p.m. and the sun was reaching the horizon. And as it was touching the horizon, a huge cloud casted a shadow on an iceberg floating in front of me. So I took my camera and I got this photo. So here you can see a huge iceberg, and just to get the size of it, if you look at the bottom left of the iceberg, you'll see some pixels. So these are Adelie penguins, and this iceberg is around 500 feet tall, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. So as you know, also in today's news, the ice is melting and ice blocks breaking off the continental ice shelf. And even today or yesterday, there was a 400 square miles iceberg ice sheet breaking off the ice sheet of Antarctica. And we're seeing more and more of these giant icebergs. And this is an alarming an alarm clock. This is an alarming sign of the temperatures rising. So this is a really alarming sign. I called this photo the sunset of Antarctica, in the sense of this huge iceberg being an alarm clock for us to fight global warming. And also I was challenged by a friend, and he said that if in the same year you swim in the Arctic and the Antarctic, then you can say that you have a bipolar personality. So I did that, of course. When people challenge me, I usually jump and do stuff. It's also cold there. It's cold in the Arctic and it's cold in the Antarctic. I checked. But the environmental case here is huge. So as a Greenpeace ambassador, we did a campaign to stop the krill harvesting in the Antarctic waters. So there are vessels, mostly Chinese vessels, coming into the Antarctic waters and harvesting krill. So krill is the base of the entire Antarctic ecosystem. It's the fuel that powers it. And there are over 500 million tons of krill in the Antarctic waters. And as fishing vessels come and harvest those krills, it impacts the Antarctic ecosystem, which is fragile as it is. So there was a vote to create the Antarctic Ocean Sanctuary. There are 25 countries who are a part of the Antarctic Alliance, and all of them voted to create the Antarctic Ocean Sanctuary, but only 3 countries voted against, and it has to be unanimous. The 3 countries that voted against, let's do a little bit of shaming. The 3 countries who voted against the creation of the Antarctic sanctuaries were China, Russia, and Norway. So unfortunately, the Antarctic sanctuary was not created, but the ARC, which is the organization who is responsible for 85% of the krill vessels, has made a commitment to stop operating in the Antarctic waters. So there was a win in this campaign, but not the biggest win that we hoped for, but at least we got a huge commitment to stop operating for krill harvesting in the Antarctic waters. People are asking, what is krill harvested for? It's harvested for food mostly in China, but it's been harvested for food mainly. Folks watching from all over the world, US, Canada, Portugal, Poland, Brazil, and more. So hi everyone from all over the world. It's great to have you here and talk about these pressing issues. So I can't show you the video because Zoom is causing us a little bit of technical difficulties. But if you'd like, we can send you the campaign for the Antarctic Sanctuary later on today. So another place I'm going to take you to is Kamchatka. Kamchatka is a paradise in the Siberian Far East. So it's in the other side of Alaska. So I got there through Moscow. So I'm flying from Moscow to the capital of Kamchatka, which is Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. And that's 9.5 hours flight domestic. So you're flying for 9.5 hours and you're still in Russia. So in case you missed it, Russia is huge. So we're landing in Kamchatka, in Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, and there we go on a helicopter. And with that helicopter, we fly along the volcanoes in Kamchatka, and there are 300 volcanoes in Kamchatka, 29 of which are still active, and we reach Lake Kurill. So Lake Kurill is a lake in southern Kamchatka, and it's a volcanic lake. Here you see the pilot. I'm always joking that he's reading the instructions on how to fly the damn thing because it's 45 years old. It's older than me. So, but we're flying, and we landed safely, which is also quite an achievement. And we're landing in Lake Kurill. So Lake Kurill is a volcanic lake. It was created in an eruption in 6,440 BC. And this lake is quite big and very deep. And it's the largest spawning site of sockeye salmon in the entire Eurasia continent. So it's second only to Alaska. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. only 2,000 people are allowed to visit there every year. And with so many salmons around, you have a lot of bears. So the brown bears come by the hundreds to eat the salmons. And the bears they don't care about us, they just want the salmon. So I flew a drone, with permits of course, over the salmon just to see how many salmons are there. And this is a photo from the drone from above showing you the salmons. So this is, as somebody said in the previous talk I gave today, this is a lot of sushi. Okay, so it all depends on your appetite. But so these are salmons from above, and they come there at the last stage of their life, of course, to lay their eggs. The males fertilize them, and then we have new salmons born, and the circle continues. And then I thought it would be super cool if I had a bear inside all of that salmon. So I took a photo of a bear surrounded by salmons. And this photo also won several international awards. And the salmons are keeping, for some reason, they're keeping the distance away from the bear. Well, it's pretty obvious why. We have a question. What is the question? Okay. Are China, Russia, and Norway krill harvesting countries? Well, no, China is. Russia is a little bit more complicated. I think they did it because of China, because they want Chinese and Russian support for the northeast corridor. So it's a lot of politics. That's what the war is about, because the northeast corridor is the top of Russia, and the Arctic Russia, which melted, unfortunately enough, for shipping vessels to transfer goods from China to Europe through the Northeast Passage. And the problem is they want to start transporting there also oil. And if you have an oil spill in the high Arctic, the damages will be catastrophical. I mean, it just white reflecting ice becomes black oil. And I can't even imagine this disaster occurring. So I think this is kind of an alliance about that. And Norway, I don't know why Norway is not acting to promote that. When I ask, I've met with several Norwegian officials in the government, including Rasmus Hansson, which is the leader of the Green Party, and other parliament members. And when I asked this question, why did Norway oppose the creation of the Antarctic Ocean Sanctuary, I got a very diplomatic answer. And that answer was, we were not happy with the way it was presented, so we asked them to improve, and then we will be happy to support it if it's done correctly. So this is kind of a political, diplomatic answer, which I'm not happy with, but it is what it is. But I hope that we are working in Greenpeace. A lot of really great people are working in Greenpeace to create a network of ocean sanctuaries where animals, marine mammals, and fish can flourish without human intervention and interruption. So yeah. What is the bear population estimate in Kamchatka? So in Kamchatka there are several thousands of bears, but in Kuril Lake there is around 200 bears in that small region. So it's a very high concentration. So I've been photographing these bears, and these bears are in a state of hyperphagia, meaning they are always hungry. So they eat 30-40 salmons a day to gain enough weight for winter's hibernation. And this guy was full of motivation. He was just hunting salmons endlessly without stopping for anything. He's just charging, catching a salmon, and then you can see the bear is really happy, the salmon isn't, and then another fish, and then another fish, and so on and so on. So this guy was really proactive. And bears like to play fight to determine hierarchy. So the top bears get the best spots in the river, and sometimes it comes down to a real fight, and it can get pretty aggressive. Okay, there is another question. I'm an entomologist, and I must ask, has Roie met Antarctica's largest native terrestrial animal? It's a midge. I did not meet a midge. I did not. But it sounds interesting. I will look it up. Thank you, Isa. So, a lot of cubs, of course, and mothers raise their cubs alone, like with polar bears. And you can see that mothers are really protective. And I love photographing the relationship between cubs and mothers. So mothers take care of their own young, and they don't let their cubs play with other cubs. So it's kind of really aggressive. And whenever a big male comes, like in this photo here, so an alpha male comes, and alpha males tend to kill cubs. Also polar bears. If a polar bear will find a mother and cubs, he will try to chase them away or kill them. It's called infesticide. And they don't kill the cubs because they're mean or vicious or whatever, or cruel. They kill them because they want to mate with the mother. And as long as there are cubs and they are breastfeeding, the mother is producing a hormone called prolactin, which prevents ovulation. And the bear wants the mother to ovulate, so she'll be in heat, and then he will mate with her, and then she will bring his own offspring to the world. So this is kind of the vicious circle that's going around there. So whenever a big alpha male comes to the shore of the lake, you can see all the other bears are evacuating, just because this male can be really dangerous for the cubs or also for the mothers. And you can see how protective they are. And I love bears. I mean, they're so expressive and they're so full of character, and each bear behaves differently. And so it's really interesting to watch and photograph. I have another question here. I'm going to answer that a little bit later, Jenny. Okay. So cubs are also really sweet, and they, again, it remind me of my own baby, my own kids. I've got 4 kids, and you can see again the curiosity. So this cub is just playing around with a fish head. It's just, hanging to it, and it looks like he's talking to the fish head. And I always imagine that the fish is telling the fish is telling the bear, like, tell me how bad is it? I can't feel my legs. So this is kind of the story behind this photo. And there are a lot of romantic moments as well, as you can see here. So 2018 was a really, really terrible year in terms of salmon. I'm going to talk about that in a second. We have another question from Michelle. Michelle is asking, what can we do to support the creation of this sanctuary? There is a lot we can do. The first thing is raise awareness to the creation of these sanctuaries, because people are not aware that we are trying to create sanctuaries. If you're in position of influence, of course, you can do a lot of things to raise influence. But also, I mean, we need to support in 3 different levels. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, about creating of sanctuary, but not only that, but conserving wildlife in general. So I'm going to talk about that in the end of my talk, more deeply. So 2018 was a really bad year for polar bears, and 2018 there were almost no salmons in the lake. So there were no salmons in the lake because of Japanese overfishing in the Sea of Okhotsk, and also because sea levels of the lake were too high because of over precipitation due to, the scientists explain it by warmer ocean currents that produce more evaporation, and then we have more snow, and then the lake is deeper, and the rivers are deeper, and the stream is too strong for the salmons. So 2018, we saw a lot of thin bears. We saw bears really fighting just to catch one fish, and bears were just walking around Lake Krill, as you can see here in this photo, walking around in Lake Krill looking for fish, and there were almost not any to be found. And I saw a lot of bears that looked like this bear. So this bear is in severe famine, and he's him and his brother actually died a week after this photo was taken. They died of starvation. And we had a lot of cub mortality during 2018 because when the mothers are starving, they don't produce milk. And with no milk and no fish, the cubs also die. So the mother has a chance of surviving and having more cubs in the following year. But if the cubs survive and the mother will die, the cubs will die as well. So that's why 2018 was a really bad year in Kamchatka for brown bears and for salmons. And this also happens. So this is a story I did, and it was a really sad story. Another project I want to talk to you about is the Saiga antelope. So the Saiga antelope, I think it's an animal that almost no one has heard of. And I took this project near Astrakhan, near the border with Russia and Kazakhstan. And the Saiga antelope is an antelope that is kind of, it's a remnant from the last ice age. It has this big, bulky nose that can heat up the air very efficiently before the Saiga breathes it in. And so I took these photos of the Saiga antelope to raise awareness to their situation. And in the last 30 years, they went from least concerned in the IUCN to critically endangered within 30 years. So I've been working with a researcher from the University of Moscow, Dr. Anna Lushenkova, and she thinks that saigas might go extinct within the next few years. So this is a really rapid extinction event happening in front of us. And the reason why they're going extinct is two reasons mainly. One is industrial hunting. So people are hunting them for meat, especially in the Republic of Kalmykia, and for saiga horns. So saiga horns are used in Chinese traditional medicine as a substitute for rhino horns. And back in the 90s, there was even a campaign to save the rhinos, hunt saiga antelopes. So there was actually a campaign that went on with the WWF, which is quite disturbing. Unfortunately, the saigas have been hunted. And another reason is because of longer heat waves. And the saiga nose has a lot of bacteria in it, like everyone does, also we do. But because of the nose shape, and when the temperature rises too high, the bacteria starts to multiply without control, and that causes sepsis. And so in 2015, we've had 250 to 300,000 saiga antelopes dead within 2 weeks period in a heat wave in the steppe region in southern Russia and Kazakhstan because of the heat wave and the sepsis. So we had 100% mortality in all of the herds that were living there. And that may happen again as longer and stronger heat waves are occurring. Nice comment from Jenny. I particularly like the human element in your presentation, how your photos portray the pain of existence in the wild caused by, in great extent, to human ignorance. Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. Thank you, Jenny. So these are the Saiga antelope, and I really urge you to read about it more and learn about the Saiga antelopes. And there are people doing amazing work in the Saiga Conservation Society, and also Dr. Anna Lushenkova from the University of Moscow, and the people in the reserves, such as Stepnoy Reserve in southern Russia, to save the Saiga antelope. And the last place I'm going to take you to today is the Pantanal region. So the Pantanal region is in Brazil. It's the largest wetlands on Earth, so it's a seasonal wetland, and it's home for the jaguars. So this is the main reason why I went to Pantanal, because I really wanted to experience jaguar photography, and I tried to photograph them with the capybara and the caiman, and also took a lot of photos of capybara. Capybara is the largest rodent on Earth, and they're pretty adorable, I must say. But besides of taking photos of the jaguars, in the Pantanal region, which are pretty awesome. And I learned a lot about their survival and how they interact with the water and the fish and their prey. Of course, with the giant anteater. The one surprise that I met there that I was not aware of, is the giant river otter. So the giant river otters are an amazing species, and they are also really endangered, and there are less than 5,000 of them left in the world. So this is a really an alarming data, and they're fascinating in their behavior. So here you can see it's already 2 a.m. here, so that's why I'm kind of tired. But here you can see a giant river otter eating a catfish, and they work together as a team, and it's really interesting to see them together. And again, the fact that there are less than 5,000 of them left in the world is also quite worrying. I would mention about the cheetahs that there are less than 7,000 left in the world. There were 140,000 just 100 years ago. I would mention the elephants and the rhinos and the giraffes, and I have a huge presentation just on those animals. But since we have little time and a lot of endangered species to talk about, I wanted to focus with you on those 4 locations. And now, before I'm going to answer all the questions that you have here in front of me, and I'm going to answer them, and you're also welcome to ask more questions, I want to touch on one specific subject. So people ask me 7,000 lions, not 7,000 lions, 7,000 cheetahs. Lions, there are more. I think there are around 20,000 lions, 25,000 lions, if I remember correctly. But cheetahs, there are less than 7,000. And the Asiatic cheetah, the cheetah from Asia, is almost completely extinct, except for a really small population of 140 left in Iran today. And the cheetahs in Africa are also pretty much in really bad shape, also because of loss of habitat, but also because of poor gene pool. Actually, in Israel, I'm from Israel, and in Israel we had cheetahs until 1959, when the last cheetah was killed. In Jordan, they had cheetahs until 1969. So, I mean, this is all happening within our lifetime. And, this is not just a story that we can tell, 300 years ago. No, I'm talking about 60 years ago. This is nothing in the time scale of history. And again, there is so much to talk about, but we can't discuss everything right now. So we're going to focus on what we can talk in the time frame. If you'd like, I can do another talk later. But I want to touch with you on one specific subject. Do you see the question on the screen right now? Why should we care? And in 2019, I gave a talk in New York City. And at the end of the talk, I asked, okay, questions? And this guy raised his hand and asked, so what if polar bears go extinct? Why should we care? Why should I care? He asked. And I'm like, what do you mean? Why should you care? I was shocked by the fact of the question. Why should I care if polar bear goes extinct? And he said, well, the mammoth went extinct and that didn't affect me, so polar bears will go extinct and it won't affect me as well. So I thought it was a really dumb question. And then when I thought about it, it's a really smart question. It's a really good question. And as much as I was angry to hear it, I was frustrated to hear it, it's a really good question that a lot of people that should care are asking, why should I care? So I decided to address this question because I don't need to persuade and convince the environmentalists. It's like preaching to the choir. I need to convince and persuade the climate deniers. Okay? And this is what we are all should be doing. We don't need to convince those who are already convinced. So I decided to work on that, and I wrote an article on why should we care. And I divided that into 3 different sections. I also did a TED talk about it, by the way, in Glasgow. But that's for another time. I've done 3 TED talks on climate. So reason number 1, why should we care, is the personal reason. Okay, we love them. They're cute and cuddly. Look how sweet they are. But this is not a good argument. This is really subjective. Maybe you hate polar bears. Okay, so what? I love polar bears. It doesn't mean that everybody loves polar bears. The second reason is the ecosystem of polar bears. So polar bears are the apex predator. And everywhere all over the world, when you remove the apex predator from the equation, the ecosystem collapses. We've seen it all over the world. We've seen it with the wolves in Yellowstone. We've seen it in Africa. We've seen it everywhere. If you remove the apex predator, it's a keystone species. If you remove that, the entire ecosystem can collapse. Suddenly you'll have more seals, and then you have more seals, you have less fish, and then you have less fish, you have less, the entire population of seals can collapse, and then you have starvation in populations that rely on fishing, like the Faroe Island and the people in Svalbard and people in Iceland and so on. So it's all connected. But the third reason, and the most crucial one, is the global scale. So in the global scale, if there are no polar bears, it means there is no sea ice. Okay, that's why they're going extinct. Polar bears are like the canary in the coal mine. So if you don't know that euphemism, coal miners used to carry around canary. It's a small bird that sings a lot into the coal mines. And when there is a gas leak, the bird would die first and stop singing. And then the miners know that there is a gas leak and they need to evacuate really quickly. So in that sense, the polar bears are the canary in the coal mine of our planet. So no polar bears means no sea ice. No sea ice, land ice is also melting. And then water level rises all over the world. And then you have hundreds of millions of people in coastal regions who will become climate refugees. And people will die of starvation and disease. And there's going to be climate wars going on. And hundreds of millions of people are at stake. Okay, so even if you don't care about polar bears, the lesson is that protecting polar bears actually means protecting ourselves. And this is a good reason for the deniers and people who don't care about the environment and people who don't care about polar bears and people who hunt polar bears for fun. And there are people like that, which is always surprising me. But even them, they should care because they are also in danger. Not just them, but their kids and their grandkids, and we want to leave a better planet for our future generations. I mean, the older generation won't be around to suffer the consequences of climate change, as Greta mentioned in the United Nations. And I think that we should all care for that reason, if not for many others as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to answer some questions now. You're welcome to follow on Instagram and Facebook, and you're welcome to visit my website to see some more images from all over the world. And I'm gonna you spell my name as you see on the screen. I'm gonna stop the share screen so you can see me better, and I'm gonna answer some questions now.
Hey Roie.
Yeah, Mark.
Gosh, I've got questions, and I know our audience does too. But your photography is incredibly powerful, and I'm really glad that we had you here on World Wildlife Day because, look, you know what you've done that I think is really unique is you not only show the beauty of the natural world and the incredible playful side of nature and bears and wildlife, but I also commend you for showing the hard truths of what's happening in our Arctic regions. You know, oftentimes people think that just showing the beauty is going to inspire people to change, but I think you, in a way that is very unique, have figured out how to tell the hard truths without being totally doomsday, but at the same time saying the truth and showing the truth through your imagery. Is that part of your main strategy to mobilize people?
Absolutely. I want to show people the beautiful nature, and I want to show that this nature is being taken away from us. I mean, intentionally, by people who look at greed and immediate profit rather than long-term sustainability for the entire planet. So my goal is to show the beauty and then take it away, because this is what's going on. This is what's happening in the real world.
It's incredible, and that is very powerful. And thank you for being an incredible ambassador for the natural world. I mean, you know, what you said at the end about why should we care? A great example is exactly, you know, you showed the Arctic regions, Antarctica and the Arctic, but also, I mean, when you show the jaguars, you're talking about jungles around the world and big cats in the jungles around the world. And without, you know, the truth is that COVID-19 is a direct example of wildlife trafficking and bushmeat trade deep within the jungles where humans used to never go, except for indigenous people.
Absolutely.
And so I think you're showing the why should we care. We are in a global pandemic that has been linked to wildlife, illegal wildlife trade and bushmeat. So I mean, I appreciate, you know, the incredible climate change imagery, but also when you're showing those jaguars, you know, jaguars are now in danger, as you know, because they ran out of tigers and they're running out of lions, and now they're going to jaguars. And it's so scary that that's the case. You know, the demand from Asia.
Not only that, but also in Pantanal Region specifically, and we're doing a campaign now in Greenpeace that 2/3 of the rainforest over there and the forest itself over there is being burnt intentionally by farmers to create more area for cows and cattle to graze. So they're losing habitat in an alarming way. And also, as you said, with COVID, so we have less tourism, less sustainable tourism. So I'm also a part with the Prince for Nature for the conservation.org Foundation to support those communities, because the entire goal of sustainable tourism is to create an environment where a live wildlife, and a live animal is worth more than a dead animal, and that stops the poaching and the killing. Because if a dead rhino is worth $50,000 and the live rhino is worth $80,000 or $90,000 thanks to tourism, it's worth for the tribes to keep that alive. And you have to have the support of the local communities, because without that, we don't stand a chance. So we're trying to support those communities in order for them to have enough resources and money, so they don't need to kill the animals in their environment just to survive.
That's incredible, and that's some of the incredible work which we need to have you back down in Jaguar country, because I'm working with the UNDP and USAID on the Jaguar 2030 corridor. And this is actually exciting because there is hope if we can work together to preserve the ecosystems. People don't realize that we can't just preserve the animal. I think your photography shows this in the Arctic regions. We can't just preserve the animal. We have to preserve the ecosystem, because without the ecosystem, there are no animals. And without
Absolutely.
those habitats, we as humans also lose our habitat and our fresh water. So
Absolutely.
There is hope. And I think we need to have you back down into the Jaguar regions because, you know, these apex predators like the polar bear, like the jaguar, these are the indicator species of the health of those ecosystems. Absolutely. And we still have them on these planets. We still have these great apex predators. And if we really work hard, we can make a difference. But I'm proud, I'm glad that you are showing the hard truths. Now, you touched on something, indigenous people. When you're in the Arctic regions and when you've gone to Kamchatka and down into the Pantanal, have you encountered indigenous people, and what have your experiences been when you worked with indigenous people?
So I'm going to answer that in a second. I just want to answer that there are a few questions that I got in the chat. Great. That people are asking several times. I want to answer that just for a second, if that's okay, Mark.
Yeah.
People are asking two questions, two biggest questions. One is where they can get prints for porches. So you can just look at my website. So that's galitz.com, galitz.com, or you can just Google my name. Or contact me on social media. So that's one. And the second is about cameras, lenses, etc. So I mean, people are always looking for gear. Okay, so but photography gear is important, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is learning photography, becoming the best photographer you can get, and getting out there. So that's way more important than camera gear. But we love camera gear, and we love collecting, and we love getting gear. So that's fine. So if you want, I mean, today everything is going towards the mirrorless cameras, and the mirrorless cameras have gotten really good in the last couple of years. And with lenses, I mean, I just don't want to get in too technical, but most wildlife photography is great between the range of 100 and 500 millimeter lenses, and there are so many lenses out there. I'm sponsored by Nikon, so I can recommend that, but there are also other really great brands out there that you can purchase, and I mean, again, but this is the least important thing about photography is worrying about camera and lenses. So we've answered those questions, which I really wanted to get out of the way, and now I'm going to answer your question, Mark, about the indigenous people. So the indigenous people, they worry about their livelihood everywhere, all over the world. I mean, it's okay for the wildlife, and it's okay for I mean, it's nice. They don't kill animals for fun. They kill animals because they need money, they need resources. Sometimes it's greed, sometimes it's mere survival. So in the Pantanal region, the Brazilians, they just want food for the cattle, and that's why they're burning the fields, and that goes out of hand and creates huge bushfires, which is terrible. So we need to support them in a way that they don't need to do that in order to get the income they need. So it's all about supporting the communities. Also in Africa, with the mountain gorillas were hunted almost to extinction. There were less than 900 mountain gorillas left in the world until conservation project with sustainable tourism and really highly expensive permits started popping up. And now they're taking care of the mountain gorillas. They are the ones responsible for saving the mountain gorillas. And that's why the indigenous people are super important. In Kamchatka, the indigenous people are totally modern. I mean, they're not involved in nature in any way. They don't have their traditional ways anymore. And in Svalbard, you don't have any indigenous people. So it's all Norwegian and a little bit of Russian. So they're not really involved. But they are involved in Canada, in the Arctic Canada, and in Greenland. And there is they have for their culture permits to hunt polar bears because it's part of their tradition. But the problem is that these permits are being sold for assholes that just want to come and shoot a polar bear and kill it. So these permits are
that's important. Revenue source. Let me ask you this: that's important. I mean, trophy hunting is unsustainable, and there's a lot of unethical trophy hunting. But I will say, I appreciate what you said about indigenous people are actually the protectors of the most wild areas. You know, they that's where they live, and that's what they thrive in. So I agree with you. Finding sustainable livelihoods is the most important thing we can do in empowering Native and indigenous people to have sustainable livelihoods, because if not, the people that are exploiting them come in and cut down the forests or buy those trophy hunting permits or buy all the whale permits.
We need to support them, absolutely. I wanted to create an NGO in New York when I was there that buys all the permits to support the indigenous people and then destroys the permits.
That's creative. That's creative.
That's one thing that I tried to create, and then COVID happened. So
you know, I know we're starting to run out of time. So and I think we've reached most of our questions. What are your hopes for the future, and how can we, as the public, directly get involved right now through your work and through Greenpeace, for instance? What is your hope for the future, and how can we get involved?
So my first of all, I'm very optimistic. Okay, so I'm very optimistic because I can't stand to be any other way. The opposite is depressing. So I have to be optimistic, and I think that we can do things in 3 different levels. So first there is the personal level, and then the personal level, we all need to recycle, reduce our energy footprint, our environmental footprint, and so on and so on. So that's first. That's personal. Second is the community. So with our cities and with our neighborhood, create compost gardens, use green energy, promote and incentive with incentives, solar and wind, and where it's safe, of course, and other renewable energy sources, and get away from coal and oil and gas. And third is the political level. So the political level is the most crucial one. With the political level, we need to, and again, now Biden is doing an amazing job with that, unlike its predecessor, to create an economic environment that supports it. Because at the end of the day, it's all about money. Okay, it's sorry to say, but it's all about money. And when it's sustainable, for people, it's more efficient and more profitable to go green, people will do that. You don't have to make them, okay? If you have an incentive to buy an electric car, I mean, I would love to get a Tesla, okay? You can get a cool electric car and you don't need to burn dead dinosaurs to go from one place to another, okay? So we need to create the government political incentives with the Paris Accord and with the carbon emissions goals and so on, because there is no reason. And I think that within 50 years or 100 years or 300 years, of course, people will look at us as the generation that almost screwed it all. We look at us as the generation that we took the loans that they need to pay. And we can fix it now relatively not too expensively, and we can also fix it later. Okay, but it will be way more expensive and way harder to fix it. We can create, and humankind, we're very ingenuitive. We can invent stuff, innovative, and we can create carbon capturing devices and recapture the carbon from the atmosphere. But this is a global scale experiment on our climate that we don't know what we're doing. We don't know the outcome. And this can be really destructive, and we will be able to fix it. It will be a pain in the ass, but we will be here. But we need to do it now before it's getting harder and harder and harder. It's like, if you have a cancer, if you catch it in an early stage, you have better chances of survival, and it won't be as bad as if you catch it in the later stage, and then you have to have amputations and chemotherapy and whatever that you don't want to get to. So we are the same with the climate, and this is how we should treat it, as a cancer that should be treated in an early stage and not wait until it gets really worse and then treat it.
Well, and I really appreciate that message. I mean, what you're ultimately saying is we get involved politically, we get involved with NGOs that are making a difference, and we, in our own lives, reduce our carbon footprint and live how we want the future to be. I think also the key is to work with empowering Mother Nature and restoring Mother Nature, to also, because Mother Nature has the highest tech it's called trees to absorb carbon.
Absolutely.
So, Mother Nature is the highest tech. So we have to do, major high tech, the industries to capture carbon, but also let's preserve the native forests that exist. Let's preserve the ecosystems, and let's restore places that we have already impacted. And together, Absolutely. I think we have a huge and bright future for wildlife and for humanity. So with that, I know it's about 2 a.m. in Tel Aviv, so we want to
2:30, but who's counting?
2:30 a.m. Well, we at the Explorers Club and all of our viewers are super grateful for your time and for your incredible imagery and very powerful imagery, as well as your message, Roie. And we look forward to hosting you and showing your film at the Explorers Club and to following your work. So thank you for sharing your website with us, galitz.com, and we will continue to look at your work. And we are very honored to have you get some sleep. And thank you for coming to the Explorers Club. And I look forward to seeing you here and out in the wilds. We also, just as an announcement to our audience, On Monday, it is World Women's Day. So we have women in Antarctica. We have a polar panel of International Explorers Club members and women of the Explorers Club. We're also celebrating our 40th anniversary of women, our leading women in the club. So join us on Monday. But for tonight, thank you, Roie. And we look forward to seeing you in person and to following your work. And thank you for your incredible champion as a champion of nature.
Thank you so much.
All right. See you all, everybody, on Monday. Have a great World Wildlife Day. Cheers.